Anyway, I'm not sure if you can hear it in my voice, but I am in the holiday spirit. Like, I am so happy to know that when I'm done this evening, I have done everything I said I was going to do. I have shared what I said I was going to share. I have created profitable students. I have created profitable, respectful students that conduct themselves like gentlemen, that actually care about their audience members, not just going out there flaunting that they can make a lot of money. And I'm proud of all of you. Omar, Kyle, Paladin, just the top three comes to mind. And there's so many more. And if I don't name your name, don't be offended because I could literally be fucking here forever. The fact that you care enough for your communities like you do, and for the people that spend the time listening to you, that's something that I was really concerned about because, as I mentioned earlier in this Twitter space, the way I made myself marketable is I had to be polarizing. I had to create a faction, a split, a division, knowing that it would create ripples. And those ripples would be, okay, you're either team ICT or not team ICT. And the ones that don't like me are going to sell me more than anybody else will. Because you all want to come here and watch me do something wrong. And I've enjoyed denying you that. And you're just still waiting, still waiting. But even despite seeing me market myself like that, being very polarizing, you as my students have learned the right lessons, and you didn't have to pattern yourself on some of the things I use in the early stages of me getting a community. Because I use the train wreck analogy or car wreck. Okay, if I could create some kind of a stir with someone that had a bigger audience member, base, a larger audience subscriber base, and I could stand right in front of them and say this, that, and either one of two things are going to happen, and this is usually what happened. I got banned, blocked or whatever, and they would never look at what I'm saying, but it didn't change the fact that I would still talk about them, and all people were like, he does have a point. Why don't you do this? Why don't we ever see your trades? And then it just became where they would just, clam up about everything. So what I wanted to see was a real one, a real McCoy step forward and say, yeah, I ain't got a problem with this. I can show you this. And that's what this industry needs. Like this industry needs not somebody going out there and fucking saying, I got $10,000, you so-and-sos. I don't think there's a fucking edge, but look at all these glass fucking trophies that mean fuck all. Okay? It doesn't mean shit to me. It doesn't mean shit to anybody else. It doesn't mean fucking nothing. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Going into a chart that's live, explaining what it's going to do before it does it, point to exactly what the fuck it's going to do before it fucking does it, and push the fucking button and manage a stop loss and take it down. That demands respect. Whether you're trading with fucking horseshoe crab fucking patterns, whether you're trading moving averages, whether you're trading with harmonic, whatever the fuck you're using, it doesn't matter. If someone does that, I have respect for that person. It doesn't matter what school of thought they use, I have respect for that person because that person's walking that talk. They're doing it. They're not talking from the anonymity of, well, trust me, bro. The fuck is trust me, bro? The fuck does that mean? How am I going to do that? I ain't seen anything to trust. I have created this mindset in my students that they know that everybody that came to me, not one of you came to me because of an ad. Not one of my paid mentorship students came to me by advertisement. They watched me do what you've been watching me do. Execute over and over and over again. And you see the same things repeating. And you wanted to know, how did I do that? And you learned. I showed you exactly what I do, how I do it when it happens. That's how you all found me. Word of mouth. And now You can tell who my students are. They're the ones out there fucking smashing it. They're out there the ones that are going to show you their executions. They don't have a problem starting a trade, showing it to you. They want to. They want to shove it up your fucking ass, twist it sideways. Okay? They ain't worried about it. They know that what they're going to do is going to work. They're not afraid of it. Now, compare and contrast that with what everybody else has been trying to avoid doing on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. They want to give you just enough to let you think that they're profitable, but they can't prove that they can execute under live data. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. It doesn't matter to me. I've been doing this a very, very long time. If it's demo or if it's live, I don't give a shit because it still has to be done with live data. You have to know what it's going to do before it happens. You can't escape that. So if anybody is willing to do that for you, and you can see that they're consistently able to employ what it is they're teaching or supposedly teaching as a conceptual idea, then that person has earned, number one, the respect from me, because that's something that 99% of these fuckers out there that are trying to sell something won't ever do for you. They'll only show you the after. Here's what I did, bro. Trust me, bro. I made this. Oh, I would eat you both. Bring your shit, man. Bring it. All that stuff means nothing. Means nothing until you can do. The doing is what matters. Talking about what you did, nobody can believe that anymore. Look at AI. They can make somebody sound and look like they're doing whatever the fuck they want them to do. You can't trust that. But guess what you can trust? You have somebody come out there before the fact say, the market's going to go here. And then you watch them with live data execute with a live fucking account. All of a sudden, you have a problem now, don't you? How the fuck could someone time travel, point to it beforehand, a week before it happens? Not just 1 minute. See, I've slapped these guys around for 2 years. Oh yeah, he's got a delay. You know, that's why he's using a 1 minute chart, because he can do this and watch. I can call this and I can call that. No, you can't. You can't replicate what I'm doing. And I've openly challenged it. Like, come on, I want to see it. I would love to see it. I would love to see it. Even if you got marginally close, one half of it, I love watching people trade. Not for the sake of watching them wreck themselves. I'm talking about people that know how to trade. I wish there was more of it. I love it. To me, that's much more entertaining than watching some fuckers running around in some pajamas chasing some pigskin. That doesn't make no fucking sense to me. That don't make any sense to me. Football, NFL, fucking stupid. You're making people rich watching people injure themselves. That's dumb. But trading, to me, that's like really watching mental chess on a battlefield where you have everything to lose. Pride, ego. You lose face in the front of your subscriber base. And you have everything to earn. Respect, glory, pride. Not that pride's a good thing, but you get to be able to say, I told you so. And do you really know what you're doing? Because if you really know what you're doing, you're actively trying to prove it. You're actively trying to prove it by contrast. Now, there's some of you going to say, no, that's not true because I know what I'm doing and I don't ever feel that. Okay, got it. I got you, man. I got you. There's a lot of you out there that are going to be like that. But I'm talking about the ones that constantly make an excuse why I don't have time to do it right now. Or when they do try it, they fail miserably in the witness of you publicly. So we have, with the spearheading of my own, we have raised the bar up in the industry. You cannot accept MT4 screenshots. You cannot accept an MT5 screenshot. You cannot accept a MyFX book because those fucking things can be rigged. But you know what you can't rig? Getting fucking paid. Getting a fucking withdrawal paid. interviewed by a fucking firm that paid you out and they are saying, what the hell are you doing that you're so good? Hello. Hello. That's our boys. That's our girls. That's our team. That's us. We are fucking here. And just because I'm parking my old ass and retiring doesn't mean you get to sit on yours. I'm watching all of you. I'm watching all of you. And the next king is coming up out of our community, not anywhere else. So hopefully you're inspired. Hopefully you're encouraged. And I've given you something to hang your hopes and sights on going into the new year next year. There's a lot of shit going on in the world. I hope you're making your house ready. One of the best things you can do is inform yourself. Prepare yourself, because things are going to get real, real uncomfortable here soon. And what you think is a constant, which is a weekly paycheck or bi-weekly paycheck, that might not be enough for you. And you're going to have a skill set that you can lean on. And trading doesn't have to be an everyday work day. You don't need to do that every day. Try to keep your costs low, your commission costs low, your trade frequency low, and try to trade with the highest quality setup. Let that be your primary focus when you're taking trades, not quantity. Quantity, that's not important. Quality is. You're going to be far less stressed when things start ramping up here soon. What am I talking about? Well, if you watched and listened to my Twitter Spaces last year, I told you some real drama's coming. And my students have been with me a long time. I told you in 2020, war is coming. It's coming. And it's coming to our soil. They've invited it. It's going to come here, and it's going to affect everybody. And it's going to affect the marketplaces, not any one particular, but all of them. And when it gets like that, you need to be patient and sit still. There's going to be periods where you're not going to be able to trade, and try to just wait and relax. These people are greedy. Their casino, they won't leave it closed forever, but they're going to disrupt it for a little bit. You've been told this years in advance. Don't be scared when it happens, but don't try to live above your means. Living above your means, spending money you can't afford to spend. That's not what you should be doing right now. You shouldn't be out there buying cars. You shouldn't be out there buying horse shit. You should be making your house ready. You have food. You have food for 2 years, non-perishable food. I talked about it last year. I'm telling you, if you don't have it, 2024, as we roll into 2024, and it could happen sooner, but as we go into 2024, that 18-month time limit I gave you last summer, we're in that right now. All kinds of shit is about to break loose. And guess what that means? Commodity markets are going to go through the roof. See, 2024 ain't going to be just a S&P win for me. I have all kinds of shit that can be used. I don't need S&P. They could keep S&P in a locked narrow range for months. I don't need that. I can trade a silver bullet in copper, in cotton, live cattle. See, once you know what you're doing, if it trades, it can be traded with the same thing. You have a cookie cutter. You can go out there and just simply stamp your cookie cutter into whatever dough is out there and take it home. And don't try to take more than that cookie cutter is designed to do. That's peace of mind. That's you not trying to make it an Olympic effect, or event rather. And for some of you, when things start really kicking off, and violence is everywhere, because it will be violent. you're going to want to feel good and comforted, and you're going to look to the markets to do that for you. I'm telling you and reminding you, don't. Don't. Don't take exorbitant risks. Don't risk what you don't have to lose. If every bit of money you have right now, you have to be very good stewards with. If you're going to the clubs on the weekends, you're a fucking idiot. If you're buying recreational vehicles or additional vehicles, you're a fucking idiot. You're trying to get the latest bling, you're a fucking idiot. Believe me, you're all going to know just how accurate Chicken Little's been. Because when this fucking shit starts falling down on all of us, my money isn't going to protect me. It's not going to protect me. Yours ain't going to protect you. In a moment, they can turn your access off to your money. What about the money you have over at that funded account company that just got tapped by the CFTC? Did you get your payout? Still waiting for it? Think you'll ever get it? Are you assured that you ever will? What happens if you never get it? Does your life get impacted by that? Or is it your mind scrambled over it and now you're all messed up? See, that's what the intended purposes are when they start disrupting things. When central bank digital currencies become a real thing here, they're saying cash is always going to be available, digital and real. That's a lie. Because as soon as it all goes to central bank digital currency, cash will be made illegal. And then they own all of us. Your money has an expiration date. If you don't spend it, you lose it. If you don't listen to them, you do things on social media they don't like. It's like in China, they say you can't spend anything, or they limit what you can spend. You can't buy that. It's only good for this. That sounds like welfare, doesn't it? Doesn't it sound like welfare? It's worse. Control somebody's ability to get food and feed their family, and you own them. You own them. And you're out here trying to get physical things. Cars, boats, overpriced bullshit Rolex watches. Rolex is shit. It's trash. Get up attack. Then you're talking about a real watch. I so want to talk about other things. I'm going to do this. I've said everything I said today about the trading. So if you're not interested in anything beyond that, just know that I have greatly appreciated your interest in my life's work. I have appreciated your continued engagement as part of our community. And I wish you nothing but success. I wish you all the blessings that the Lord could lay on you with the information He's given me. I hope that it helps you and your family. I hope it keeps you and helps provide for you. It's been my intent to help all of you to do that. And I want all of you, even the ones that don't like me, I want all of you to succeed. I want you all to be spared from all the things that are coming. But I want to transition to a topic that some of you aren't going to like, okay? But I feel like I have to talk about it because I have to. But if you're not interested in anything outside of trading, this is the time when you can turn off the Twitter space and bid me farewell or tell me go fuck off. Whatever. You can say anything you want on your last day, right? But the last time we sat down and I kind of like went over some things about what I believe. We talked for like 6 hours, and it didn't feel like 6 hours for me. And I wish I would have kind of like kept going. but I know it's kind of hard to watch or listen to something like that because it's so long, and it was about topics I'm sure you were hoping that I would break away from and go back into trading, but I'm not going to talk about trading anymore in this Twitter space. So you're welcome to depart from it. I don't even care how many leave or whatever. But if I got one person listen to me, that's fine. And that's who I'm talking to. But we went through a series of things that I believe that are proven historically, not just in the Bible, but the idea of timing things. God's a date setter. Okay, I'm not sure if you know it or not, but just like these markets, they're all ran on time. Everything's ran on time. Your life is ran on time. If you have wisdom, you'll count the number of your days. Realizing that we're just like a vapor here, 1 minute and gone the next. But when you're young, like I was when I was 20, you feel like you're going to live forever. You don't understand or identify your own mortality. You just think, I have plenty of time left. And there was a period of time when I was afraid of dying. I was afraid of, was death going to hurt? Would it be a long, terrible experience? Or would I be spared that? Or would I just go in I thought I would go in a car accident, to be honest with you. I had lots of car accidents. They were my fault, mostly, except for one where I was sitting in a red light with my wife. They came right from the other direction and didn't even turn the wheel. Just instead of turning left, they came right in and smashed into me. And they switched seats, and they didn't have car insurance. So they totaled my car and their car, and it was all out of pocket for me. So the idea of time, well, time is a physical property. And when you understand that, a lot of things come to light as well. I shared with you one of my mentors as a Bible teacher, which is the late Chuck Missler, Dr. Chuck Missler. But I also mentioned that I don't subscribe to everything that he subscribes to. But what I loved most about his teachings were that he treated the Bible as and that the Bible was a integrated message system outside our time domain. That's like kind of like his slogan, and that really resonated with me. And I've always been interested in prophecy. I've always been interested in eschatology, end time events, and things. And there's lots of commentaries that were written a long time ago that you may have read if you're someone of this persuasion where you like to read stuff. Chances are, majority of you listening probably aren't even interested about what I'm about to say. And if you are still staying on, you're going to start falling off and turning off the Twitter space. And I get it, I understand. But we walked through a couple things scripturally where I kind of like made a challenge for those that are my students that are Jews. You as a culture, you believe in Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, and you believe in Moses and you believe in the prophets, and your God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and so is mine. But your departure from our agreement in who we believe in is divided by Christ, because you expected to see a conquering Messiah, which he's coming. He's coming. But you omitted and didn't recognize Isaiah chapter 53, where it describes he's coming as a suffering servant first. And history itself records that there was only one person that was ever crucified, and that was Jesus. And he's the only one that died and resurrected himself. Buddha didn't do it. It didn't happen. Okay. And when I walked everyone that was willing to listen, I didn't get any emails that I could see. And I get lots of emails, but usually some of the email titles are very inflaming. I got a lot of them from a lot of Muslim listeners. And you didn't understand when I was asking. I was asking for your participation in the conversation because I was trying to have an open dialogue because there's some things I want to learn, and I can't learn any better than the people that actually live and practice Islam. So I was asking, for a participation, and some of them are upset. And for instance, that girl Mona, she's out there. From my understanding, I think she's a lesbian. And if I'm incorrect by saying, I apologize, but my understanding is, doesn't Islam frown on lesbianism? Like, how's she going to defend Islam and talk about me when I was asking the community at large that were Muslim, do they see this? Because I was looking at it and studying it, and I can't read Arabic. Like, I don't know what it means when it has that stuff written out. But I caught a lot of flack for that. So on the same coin, but just the opposite side, I was looking to see if there was any Jewish listeners that had a response for what we went through in Genesis chapter 5, where it literally goes from Adam to Noah, and you look at their names and the meaning of their names. It talks about, man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God. Now think about it. The blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring. How can God die? God's the eternal spirit. So he has to come and place himself in the form of flesh, which is the only thing about God that can die. That's what makes the Son of God. It's not God the Son, it's the Son of God, the humanity of Christ. So I didn't get any that I could tell. I'm ready to be corrected by someone forwarding an email. Maybe they reached out to me because I was actively really interested in to see the response in that. But um, to me, I think it's astonishing. Like, how can you not see Christ in that as a Jew? How can you not see that? I mean, I can understand because when Palm Sunday occurred, Christ basically was holding them accountable that they didn't recognize that day because they should have known the very day he was riding in, proclaiming to be the Messiah. And how does that happen? Well, before I get into that, here's Jesus riding in on a donkey saying, hey, look, there's so many times that I wanted to shelter you and preserve you and give you peace. But because you have not recognized the day of your visitation, what's he talking about? He was holding them personally as a nation accountable that they didn't know that was the very day he was showing up as the Messiah. He held them accountable to that, so much so that he spiritually blinded them. And you wonder why a Jew can't see Jesus as their Messiah. That's a miracle right there. That's proving that Christ is who he said he was. Because if you take a Jew to Isaiah 53, it's astonishing how they don't see Jesus in that. And how can you wrestle with Genesis chapter 5 in the genealogy from Adam to Noah? Their names literally spell out the gospel of Christ. And for the Muslims to say Jesus wasn't God, that right there tells you man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God, not God's, not one of three, the blessed God, the Father himself was going to come down teaching his death. His what? Jesus didn't die? Yeah, he did. His death shall bring the despairing comfort or rest. That's what that means. That's the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 15. I mean, it tells you that's exactly what that is. I told my memberships in my private mentorship in 2020 when that whole COVID crap started. I said that you need to start watching Israel, and we're about to see Ezekiel 38, 39 come to pass. And I told them, I said, Russia and Turkey and Iran are going to make a move. And they are the very nations in those chapters of Ezekiel that are never in history ever been allies before, but they are right now. What's the probabilities of that? With everything else that's going on in the world, one could argue and say, well, nations can fortify, a union together. What's the big deal about that? And most people, if they're being honest, not publicly, most people have a distaste for Israel being there too. Now, I'm going to share my opinion, okay? And my opinion is based on what I believe that the Bible teaches. And because I place my faith in that, if you want to call me, whatever you want to call me, I'm okay with it, okay? I'm not trying to convince anybody here. I'm just sharing, and you have been invited to leave the conversation if it's something you're not interested in. So if you stay here, you have listened to this because you wanted to. But I'm going to compare and contrast Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And I have something that's going to offend all three of them, I'm certain. It's not my intent to offend, it's my intent to try to cause you to think about it. And while I may not be in social media active today, I will be reading tweets to me. And if you can share what you think or what you believe, whether you're in agreement or disagreement, and you can do it respectfully, I will read your tweet. I actively want to read it. I'm not trying to say a one-sided conversation and then say, here it is, and there's nothing else. I'm just admitting to you up front that you're not going to sway me. And I am aware that everything I'm sharing as my own testimony or my belief is in no way whatsoever going to convert you. I'm not going to convert you, okay? I'm not going to convert you from Islam. I'm not going to convert you from Judaism, okay? But know this, that there is no God outside of Christ. That's him. He came in the flesh. So because I'm telling you that, no matter what response you give me, whether it be disrespectful or respectful, I prefer it to be respectful because I like to see cordial conversation. Okay? That's the problem with religion. Religion turns the ability to have a civilized conversation into war. And I can have an opinion that's different from all of you, and we can still have a conversation, knowing that this was your side, which I'm interested in. I want to hear the perspective. Like when you see, if you're a Jew, what do you think about that with Isaiah 53? How do you not see Christ on the cross there? How do you not see him on the cross like that? Because when he comes back at his second coming, that is your Messiah that you were expecting as a nation of Israel. You're expecting that Messiah, but you've omitted or ignored, for lack of a better word, the suffering servant Messiah aspect that he had to come first to die for sin. What do you think about Genesis chapter 5? Can you shoot holes in that? Because you're going to know Hebrew better than I am, right? So if those names don't really mean that, or if they do, what do you do with that as a Jew? And as a Muslim, what do you do with that says that God himself's coming down to die for sin? Which wrecks the whole argument that many Islam believers try to say that Christ really didn't die. He didn't really die on the cross. When that's the whole basis of believing in Christianity. I mean, if you take away the crucifixion and the resurrection, there's no hope for any of us. None of us can escape our sin then. We'll all die in our sin if we don't have faith in that, because there's no answer for sin. No other religion has an answer for it. How are Jews right now? How are they making atonement for their sin? There's no temple. What's going on? They're in a jackpot. Something wrong, right? But so my point is this: I was talking to my best friend Sean, who is a Christian. He was going to churches longer and earlier than I did, and we get into conversations from time to time about eschatology, which is the study of end time events, and doctrine, theology, and the Godhead, because he wrestled with the Trinity. He started as a Trinitarian and discovered that there isn't a Trinity, but there is a Godhead. Okay, and a Godhead is not three people; it's three roles. Just like I am a father to Cameron, I'm a mentor to you if you're a trading student, and I am a husband to my wife. How many Michaels does it take to do that? It's just me. So whenever you look for three in the Bible, okay, um, this is how I side with Judaism, and this is how I side with Islam, that there is only one God. There's one. It's not three. It's not three persons in a Trinity. It's one God that came down and created a body born of a woman under the law that was allowing him to be tempted just like all of us. He was tempted just like we are every single day. But he didn't sin. Why? Because the Father in him, that Holy Spirit, because that's what he is, God's an invisible spirit, that the angels finally saw the face of, that's why they rejoiced in the fields when Mary gave birth. They rejoiced and sang. Why? Because they saw the face of God. No angel ever saw the face of God. He inhabited the light, but they couldn't approach him. Who's the closest angel to God that would get close to God? Lucifer. That's why he was prideful, because he was the anointed cherub that covered all other angels. He had the highest authority. Next to God, there wouldn't be anything else except for whatever he said. So when God said, okay, look, it's time, draw them to me, let's go. When Lucifer called them, they all came. And because they saw him and he had the authority over them, he was prideful. So I go back and forth with, while I believe that even Lucifer didn't see God's face, I believe if any angel would have seen it, it would have been him, because he was allowed to be the closest to God. That's what makes him the tree, as we talked about in the last time we were talking about the scripture. That's what makes Lucifer the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Because how could he know good? What's good? He was the closest to God, and yet still rebelled against him. Because every other angel that did the will of God, wouldn't they be considered good too? And we understood by the types and the models that's being shown in the symbols of Ezekiel and Isaiah, in the chapters where Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel chapter 28. That's the rise and fall of Lucifer. And we understand that those trees are symbols of angels, ranks of angels, and eventually there's one that's specifically Lucifer. So when we go back to the Garden of Eden, when God said, don't eat of any of those, you can eat of any tree, okay? But that one here, specifically in the middle, don't even touch it. Whoa. So there's something different there, right? You can eat freely of all these trees, but this one here, don't even touch it. And we went through the whole detail about what the real sin of Adam and Eve were, and how was Eve wholly and solely deceived. And that was a sexual event. And then we understood that Cain wasn't biologically Adam's, and we can understand that it's taught specifically in our Old Testament too, and then confirmed in the New Testament. And then you have a problem with, why did God say in the Old Testament? Because I had this problem too. When I started reading the Bible, where God says, destroy every one of these individuals, man, woman, and child. Well, I can see an atheist argument in that before I was really versed in the understanding of who these individuals were. They're descendants of crossbreeding of angels. So their whole purpose, when these angels descend, they were trying to pollute the gene pool that all of us have. We're SIN positive. All of us. After the flood, that bloodline still found a way. Angels still sinned, okay? And this whole idea doesn't find its way in churches today because Augustine adopted Julian Africanus's idea of it's the Sethites, which actually makes no sense. Everybody in Jesus' day, when the scriptures were understood, they understood it was angels that sinned. They took wives and they had offspring that were not normal. You don't get 9 feet tall, men, just because a believer versus a non-believer has a relationship. So we went through a long, drawn-out discussion about that, but I want to talk about how when Jesus held them accountable to know the very day, would it be fair for him to say, you should have known this when they had no ability to know what day it was? Of course not. It wouldn't have been fair. But he held them to a standard so high that they didn't know the very day he was coming, that he spiritually blinded them as a nation. Which is the very reason why we understand that the Bible teaches there's going to be 7 years of tribulation. And Jeremiah calls it the time of Jacob's trouble. And I have friends and I have people I like listening to on YouTube that have various different beliefs about eschatology and what they believe in terms of whether there is a harpazo, which is a rapture, which is, science fiction to some, that it can't happen. The same people that believe that Jesus ascended into a cloud when he ascended after his resurrection and spent time with the apostles, they watched him go up into the clouds. They watched him do that. They watched him ascend. Okay, they believe that happened. They believe that Elijah got caught up in a fiery chariot, and they believe that Enoch was taken off the face of the earth because he walked with God and God took him. They believe in those events. But when it comes to Thessalonians, when Paul says, behold, I show you a mystery, but that word, I show you a mystery, okay, if you understand it, what he's saying is I'm showing you something that wasn't completely new. It was previously revealed, but in a manner that would require more understanding. That means in the Old Testament. The rapture, where God comes, there's two events that's going to come here soon. One of them is the harpazo, the snatching up, the taking out of the way, of harm's way, of the body of Christ. Not every believer will go. Why do I say that? Because, well, look at it this way. If you were going to get married, okay, and you ask your bride to be, hey, will you marry me? And they say, yes, I want to marry you, but let's wait until I get this stuff done over here because I really want to go and spend time with my friends first. I have some things to take care of. Let's put it off another year or two. As a groom to be or a husband to be, how would that make you feel about your spouse to be? Would you think that person is genuinely excited about being married to you? Or they're like, yes, let's do it right now. Which bride would you want? You would want the one that says, I cannot believe you're asking me. Yes, the sooner the better. I love you, and I want to secure our relationship together and solidify it with a marriage. That's what God wants. And when God had chosen Israel, and before some of you start thinking this, I'm not going to comment and try to encourage the idea of replacement theology because I don't believe in that. But there is a distinction between the church and Israel. There's two different destinations there, okay? And that's the problem. And both sides are guilty of vilifying the other. Judaism, they appreciate the love that Christians give towards them and their nation, but they have a disdain for the fact that we believe in Christ. And they think that, we're fools because of that. Christians see the distinction between the church and Israel, and some of them have taken an extreme view and said, well, the church has replaced entirely Israel, and they haven't. Their destinations are different. How God will treat them is different. Even though the Gentile bride of Christ, which is the church, was grafted in, as the Bible says, we have totally different destinations. And because Israel called God's wife first, okay, what happened when they disobeyed God? He basically divorced them, right? And he says, well, look, you're going after strange gods and idol worship, and you just didn't want to listen to me. So now I'm going to use the Gentiles to make you jealous because I'm a jealous God. I'm going to make you jealous with the Gentiles. And I will call a people that are not of you, but of the Gentiles. Well, what does that sound like? That sounds like the Christian doctrine of Christ, right? And when Jesus first came, he came what? Preaching to the Jews. And then he switches up and says, what? I got to start dealing with the Gentiles too. And then he gave that ministry to Paul. Saul, who became Paul, was the apostle to the Gentiles. And he was given a revelation that really didn't need to be given, because if you study the Old Testament, there are models. Remember, I was teaching similitudes. Okay, the models that are taught in the Old Testament, they pattern the very specific events that's going to happen in the future, or very many times the very events and actions of Christ in his ministry on the earth and when he comes back. Just like the feasts of the Lord, the 7 feasts of the Lord, they're prophetic in nature too, but they're also something that they are supposed to be participated in on a yearly basis. The idea that Christ held the nation of Israel accountable for not knowing the very day that he was riding in on a donkey proclaiming to be the Messiah, you find that in Daniel chapter 9, verse 25, 26, and 27, which is always referred to as Gabriel's prophecy or Daniel's 70 weeks. And I'm going to spare you a very long and very technical discussion, but if you want to learn more about this, there's a book called The Coming Prince. That book is, it might be a little bit challenging for some of you to read, but there have been some very good scholarly presentations that have been done inside of 15, 20 minutes on YouTube. If you do a search on Daniel 70 weeks prophecy, if you want to have like a little bit of a supplemental review of what I'm talking about here and glossing over, which doesn't really do it any justice. But if you understand those 3 verses, what Gabriel basically said was, here's the very day that when the decree is given to rebuild the city of Jerusalem, not the decree to rebuild the temple, but there was only one decree to rebuild the city of Jerusalem. And it took 3 parts. 3 kings actually had a say in the matter. But it finally was rebuilt. And Gabriel's prophecy of telling Daniel in chapter 9, verse 25, 26, and 27, it gives you a very specific number of days. And if you count that out, and we have the help of the Royal Observatory in Greenwich of England. They helped with the calculation of the aspects of the Julian versus the Babylonian calendar. Prophecies usually marked with 360 days a year, and something happened, where I believe, because I've read other books, because I've always been a student of astrology, I believe Mars had an influence on our planets, and every calendar changed from a 360-day year to 365, and something happened. And there are some scholarly works that are done outside of Bible-based views, just scientifically represented, where Mars had a interference with our orbital rotation, and somehow we picked up an extra 5 days or so, a little bit over 5 days per year. So while every calendar around the world that kept calendars, they all had a 360-day calendar, and they all, for some reason, changed all around the same short period of time. And a lot of scientists have some pretty convincing arguments that, and I believe it too, that Mars had an influence on our calendar, which caused us to move to a 365-day calendar. Well, prophecy still rolls on a 360-day calendar year. And if you have that in mind and you use the calculation, and all the time aspects of calculating that was verified by the Royal Observatory in England, and you can check all this stuff. You can do all the math yourself. It's a long-winded calculation, but all of the details are in that book, The Coming Prince. And you probably won't read it and feel like it's an easy read, but it's all there. I mean, it's definitely all there. You can do the calculations. It comes to April 6th, 32 AD, which is the very day that Jesus rode in on the donkey and proclaimed himself as the Messiah. And then that same week, April 10th, which was a Thursday, because Good Friday is a myth. You can't get 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth like Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the great fish, which is Jesus' proclaimed response to the Pharisees. It said, show us a sign. A wicked generation seeketh out their sign. There's no sign given unto it, but the sign of Jonah. As 3 days and 3 nights Jonah was in the belly of the fish, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth. So that was his only response. So how can you get 3 days and 3 nights if Jesus died on the cross on a Friday? You can't. If he's resurrecting and coming back to life before sunrise on Sunday, the math isn't mathing, right? So it's Thursday. And I actually have a study where if you look at the creation week, the Passion Week, where he rode in on a donkey on Palm Sunday, all the way to the day of resurrection, all of those days pattern the very days of creation. So he created all things new, just like he did in the beginning. Day 1, day 2, day 3, and so forth. So, but anyway, the crucifixion was on the 10th of April, 32 AD. So if Gabriel gave Daniel that prophecy, and the Jews read this, they understood it. They should have understood it, right? They should have known the very day that Jesus was coming as the Messiah. So whoever rides in on a donkey on that day should be the Messiah. What other supporting evidence? Well, he was bringing people back from the dead. He was healing the blind, healing the sick. He was feeding people with basically a snack lunch and had leftovers like Thanksgiving, baskets of it. He walked on water. He knew their hearts and minds. He read their minds. He never was tricked up. He knew about the body. A 12-year-old Jesus had more understanding about the body of the human being, and he confounded the doctors in the temple at 12 years old. So he fit everything. There were 300 prophecies. This one figure in history met every single one of them. And the level of probabilities just to get 10 of them is astronomical, let alone 300 of them. So if he fulfilled over 300 of the first ones, there's thousands of them he's got that he's going to fulfill in his second coming. So when we have this discussion about, and like I talked about with my friend Sean, he thinks that there is like this period of tribulation. It's 7 years, okay? And in Christendom, there's 2 camps, okay? One camp gets subdivided into 3 other subgroups, but the main view is there is a rapture where the body of Christ is taken out of the way. That means it's treated just like Enoch was. God took him off the face of the earth. He didn't die. Elijah was taken off the earth. He did not die. So that's a rapture. That's a rapture. So for people that say, oh, this rapture is not real, it was created by, no, wrong. Nope. Go back to Genesis, the book of beginnings. Everything is in the book of Genesis. The crucifixion, the resurrection, the rapture, the tribulation, the end times. Who's going to be in the end times fighting against Jesus like they have a chance? So everything is found in that one book. You don't even need the other 65 books. Just Genesis will teach you everything. Just look at Genesis chapter 5 and the genealogy. It's crazy, right? And then we took it one step further, and I said, okay, look at Genesis chapter 5 and Genesis chapter 11. And I walked you through the number of years they were alive before they gave their firstborn. And you add those years up, and it came to 1,948. That's an interesting number, isn't it? Very interesting. Well, that same thing happens when you go over to Ezekiel. God tells Ezekiel, lay on your side for this many days. And this is going to represent 1 day for 1 year for Israel's sins. And once you do that, turn over and lay on your right side for a number of days. And again, they represent 1 year for 1 day. And if you do the calculation of that prophecy, and I'm gonna spare you that, okay? But there, again, you can find a lot of really good short presentations that do a very scholarly work of explaining it. But it gives you the very day of May 14th, 1948, when Israel became a nation again. The same 1,948 days that the genealogy from Genesis chapter 5 and 11, which is Adam to Abram, the father of nations. Now, you're going to tell me that God's not a date setter, because he is, and he's precise. What was the margin for error for these prophecies? 0. Because if it didn't happen on those days, none of it was real, right? But yet it is. Now, let's roll back the time in Michael's life. I'm 14 years old. My friend Sean, we're laying on the picnic table of his dad in the backyard, staring up at this space, looking at clouds and stars and the moon. And I remember telling him, I said, Sean, you know what, man? Jesus said, when the signs start showing up, that generation will not pass away until all of them happen. That means we're going to see the rapture. We're going to see the second coming of Christ. We're going to see that in our lifetime. Do you have any idea how exciting that is? He's like, yeah, it's kind of neat. But I could tell he wasn't really subscribing to it. And later on as an adult, he was like, and he still holds this view. He doesn't want Jesus to come back yet. And that's what separates who goes in the rapture and who doesn't. And why do I say that? If you look at the parable of the 10 virgins, 5 of them make themselves ready. They keep their lantern wick trimmed, their lantern full of oil, that's the Holy Spirit, prayed up, and they're constantly ready to go. I am very happy. I'm happy with my family. I'm happy with the life that God's blessed me with. I'm happy with everything. I am ready to go. I would rather be with God than here. And that doesn't sound like suicide, because I would never kill myself, because that's self-murder. But I would rather, I want this event to happen. Like, I'm actively praying for it every single day. I want it to happen. I pray for my family. I pray for myself. I pray for all of you to be counted worthy to escape these things that are coming upon the earth. But there is a faction of Christendom that don't believe there's a rapture. They believe it was a made-up thing. It's an escapism. When that's a really poor choice of words, because the whole idea of what the Old Testament teaches, God is an escape artist for the people that love him. Like, he gets them out of harm's way. You don't believe it? Go through those stories. Yeah, sure, there's people that die. There's people that have hardships and things that happen to them, absolutely. But the flesh profits nothing. The flesh isn't going to heaven. That's why when people say, oh, well, if God was a God that loves everybody, he wouldn't let sin happen to these little children. He wouldn't let these people in the world get raped and murdered and abused. Well, guess what? That's a consequence of sin. He promised that those things were going to happen as a result of the fall of man, of Adam and Eve. He's keeping his promise. But you know what he also promised? That if you love him and you trust him and you believe his gospel and you obey his gospel, that's Acts 2:38, by the way, then you will be spared that hour of temptation and trial that the whole world will experience. How can someone get that kind of special treatment? Well, we'll talk about it. But there's this idea that some church believers and Bible believers and even believe in Jesus. They say that there is no rapture. And it's a lot of the Southern folks, I love, there's a channel. I didn't want to name any specific channels here, but I'm not going to do it. Actually, I'm not going to do it, because I know some of you that don't like me would love nothing more to go there and start more trouble. But there is a Southern lady that I absolutely love. She reminds me of a young version of my grandmother. I love her uploads, and she's like a homesteader, and she doesn't believe in a rapture, and it's unfortunate, but she believes that, like my friend Sean, they believe that we have to endure 7 years of tribulation, which makes absolutely no sense. Okay. Um,